Have you ever realized how draining it is to constantly try to manage everything, your plans, your feelings, even the actions of others? We often convince ourselves that if we could just get everything right, if we could predict every twist and prepare for every turn, then maybe life would finally calm down. Maybe peace would come once everything falls into place. But strangely, the tighter we try to hold on, the more things seem to slip through our hands. The more we chase control, the faster life seems to run. We approach life like a strategy game, calculating every move, anticipating every result, hoping to stay one step ahead of uncertainty. But life isn't waiting for us to plan the next move. It's flowing, shifting, and alive, like a river that changes course without asking. No matter how detailed our plans are, the current always finds its own path. Deep inside, we know this truth. We know that control is something we imagine we have, yet we keep reaching for it because it makes us feel secure. It gives a false sense of stability in a world that is always moving. But as Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us, control isn't peace. It's fear disguised as order. The desire to control doesn't come from inner calm. It comes from worry, from the quiet fear that without control everything might fall apart. Yet the irony is that the more we try to control, the more fragile we become. The moment we loosen our grip, life doesn't fall apart. It begins to breathe. In this journey, you'll discover what happens when you stop fighting life and start flowing with it. You'll see that letting go doesn't mean losing power. It means finding a deeper kind of strength. Because when you no longer need to control everything, life doesn't get harder, it gets lighter, and that's where real peace begins. Lesson 1. The weight of control. Imagine holding a rope that's slowly slipping through your hands. Your instinct is to pull harder, to tighten your grip, to stop it from getting away. But the tighter you hold, the deeper it burns. That's what we do with life. We cling to certainty, to people, to outcomes, believing that if we just hold on tightly enough, we can stop things from changing. Yet, it's that very resistance, the refusal to let life move as it naturally does, that creates our suffering. We spend so much energy trying to make everything secure. We plan every detail, we analyze every word, we chase perfection in the hope that control will finally bring peace. But control doesn't create calm. It creates exhaustion. It keeps the mind tense and the heart restless. Every what if, every attempt to shape tomorrow, adds another layer of weight to a spirit that was meant to flow freely. Buddha taught that we suffer not because life is painful, but because we refuse to let it move. Think about that. Pain is not the problem. Resistance is. Life is like a river. It was never meant to be held still. When we fight its current, we drown in our own expectations. But when we release the need to control, even for a moment, something shifts. The current carries us. The struggle softens. Peace begins to return. So pause for a moment. Look within. What are you gripping so tightly that it's quietly burning you? Is it a plan that keeps slipping away? A person you fear losing? Or a version of yourself you've outgrown but can't let go of? Whatever it is, notice how heavy it feels. Then imagine loosening your hand, just slightly. Feel that space, that relief, that quiet. That's not weakness, that's freedom beginning to breathe. Lesson 2. Be the sky, not the storm. Life will always send storms. They come without warning, sometimes as a sharp word from someone close, sometimes as a thought that spirals into anxiety, sometimes as a fear that visits you in quiet hours of night. But peace doesn't come from stopping the rain. It comes from remembering that you are the sky. The sky never fights the storm. It doesn't try to hold back the thunder or chase away the lightning. It allows everything to pass through and still remains untouched. That's the nature of your mind when it is awake. Beneath the noise of emotion, beneath every thought and fear, there is a stillness that nothing can shake. You are not the storm that passes through your mind. You are the space that holds it all. But we forget that, don't we? The moment anger rises, we become anger. The moment sadness appears, we are sadness. We get pulled into every passing cloud as if it defines who we are. We let a single thought dictate our peace. That's how suffering begins, not from what happens, but from the meaning we attach to it. Buddhist wisdom teaches, observe without absorbing. Watch your emotions like clouds drifting across an open sky. Don't chase them, don't fight them, simply watch. The act of observing creates distance, and that distance is freedom. When you learn to witness without becoming, you discover a strength that no chaos can touch. Someone says something cruel. Let their words pass through you, not into you. Don't let their storm become your sky. The next time your mind starts racing, telling you stories about failure, fear, or what might go wrong, pause. Take a single breath. Ask yourself, is this thought the truth, or just weather passing through? You'll notice something powerful. The thought begins to fade, the cloud dissolves, and what remains is clarity. In today's world, everyone's mind feels crowded. We scroll endlessly, absorb emotions that aren't ours, and let the chaos of the world seep into our peace. We're like open windows during a storm, wondering why everything inside feels so unsettled. But mindfulness is the act of gently closing that window, not to shut life out, but to protect what's sacred within. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." True peace isn't found in silence outside you. It's found in stillness inside you. The world can roar, people can shout, life can tremble around you, and yet the sky remains. The storm is loud, but it is temporary. The sky is vast, and it endures. So begin to live like the sky. Let the waves crash, let the winds howl, let emotions come and go. But don't forget who you are beneath them. You are not your worry, your anger, or your pain. You are the calm awareness that sees them all rise and fall. And here's the beautiful truth. When you stop becoming every thought that crosses your mind, peace doesn't just visit you, it stays. Because peace isn't something you find after the storm. It's what you become when you remember you were never the storm to begin with. Lesson 3. Care deeply, not desperately. There's a quiet exhaustion that too many hearts carry. The kind that doesn't show on the surface, but weighs heavy inside. It's the fatigue of always being there for everyone, of giving, fixing, supporting, until you realize you have nothing left for yourself. Many people confuse compassion with self-erasure. They believe that to be good, they must say yes to every request, heal every wound, and carry every burden. They try to care for everyone and end up losing themselves. The world praises this kind of endless giving. It calls it selfless, noble, even holy. But here's the truth Buddhism gently reminds us of. Compassion without wisdom becomes suffering in disguise. When your kindness drains your peace, it's no longer compassion, it's attachment. When your empathy silences your own needs, it's no longer love, it's self-neglect. True compassion, the kind the Buddha spoke of, is not blind sacrifice. It is wise compassion. It knows that to heal others, you must first behold yourself. To offer light, you must protect your own flame. There's a story told in many monasteries. A monk once said, "The river feeds the forest, not by flooding it, but by flowing steadily. If the river gave everything at once, it would dry up and nothing would live. But when it flows with balance, both the river and the forest thrive." That is how compassion is meant to move, not in floods of exhaustion, but in steady currents of clarity. Yet most of us live like overflowing rivers. We pour out love until we're empty. We stretch ourselves thin, trying to make everyone happy, and we measure our worth by how much we can give. But the truth is, you don't have to give everything to prove your kindness. The universe doesn't ask for your depletion, only your presence. Look at nature. The sun doesn't burn itself out to shine. It rises, it warms, and when it's time, it rests. Even light needs rhythm. Even love needs boundaries. Buddhist philosophy teaches that the purest form of compassion is rooted in awareness, not obligation. When you care with awareness, you give from peace, not pressure. You see others clearly, their pain, their struggles, but you no longer mistake their suffering as your personal responsibility to fix. You become a mirror of calm rather than a sponge of pain. Ask yourself this: how many times have you said yes when your heart was quietly begging for rest? How often have you felt guilty for setting boundaries as if protecting your peace was selfish? The truth is, boundaries are sacred acts of love, not just for you, but for the world. Because when you are drained, your compassion becomes fragile. But when you are whole, your kindness becomes endless. To care deeply doesn't mean you must care widely. It means you direct your love with intention. You focus on what's yours to hold and gently release what isn't. You don't have to attend every argument, heal every wound, or respond to every cry for attention. Some things are not yours to carry, and wisdom is knowing the difference. The Buddha's path has always been the middle way, not indulgence, not deprivation, but balance. The same truth applies to love. Compassion guided by clarity creates harmony. Compassion without clarity creates chaos. When you learn to care wisely, you stop drowning in the suffering of the world and start becoming a refuge within it. So take a moment and breathe. Reflect on where your care is flowing. Are you pouring into what nourishes you or what drains you? Are you lighting the path ahead or burning yourself just to keep others warm? Remember, your energy is sacred. Your peace is not selfish. It's the foundation of your compassion. You don't need to give everything to be good. You don't need to say yes to be kind. Protecting your peace is not an act of distance. It's an act of love. When your care becomes steady instead of desperate, something beautiful happens. You stop being consumed by the world's chaos and start influencing it with your calm. You become like the river, flowing, generous, and alive, not flooding the forest, but nurturing it in balance. So, care deeply, but not desperately. Love wholly, but wisely. Because when you honor your own peace, your love doesn't shrink, it expands. And in that expansion, you don't just save your own spirit, you help others remember how to save theirs. Lesson 4. Freedom in letting go. Life gets easier the moment you stop trying to make it easy. It sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? But that's the quiet wisdom hidden beneath every Buddhist teaching. The more you try to control life, to force it into your timeline, to shape it into your image, the heavier it becomes. Control makes you believe you're building peace, but really you're building resistance. And resistance is what turns every small challenge into a storm. Letting go isn't giving up. It's realizing you never had control, only the illusion of it. It's seeing that your constant effort to predict and protect everything was never about peace. It was about fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of change. Fear of losing what you thought defined you. But life, in its quiet wisdom, keeps reminding you that nothing was ever truly yours to hold. Not your plans, not your possessions, not even the people you love. Everything is borrowed. Everything moves. Non-attachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You stop trying to freeze what was meant to flow. You stop mistaking temporary moments for permanent truths. You stop believing that peace will come once everything is fixed. Because peace was never waiting at the end of control. It's what appears when you finally let control go. Imagine a leaf floating down a river. It doesn't fight the current. It doesn't demand the water slow down or change direction. It simply moves, carried effortlessly by what is. And in that surrender, it travels farther than it ever could by force. That's what letting go feels like. Not falling apart, but falling into alignment. When you let life carry you instead of trying to carry it yourself, something extraordinary happens. The weight lifts. Buddha said, "You only lose what you cling to." Those words cut straight through the noise of the modern mind. Every time you grasp too tightly to people, to expectations, to old stories about who you're supposed to be, you create the very pain you're trying to escape. But the moment you open your hand, even slightly, freedom begins to enter. Because freedom was never outside you. It was waiting for space to breathe. Think about all the things you've tried to control. Outcomes, relationships, timing, your own emotions. How much energy has that taken from you? How many nights have you spent replaying something you couldn't change? How many times have you tried to fix the flow of life, only to realize it kept moving anyway? Maybe peace isn't found in fighting the current, but in learning to float with it. Letting go doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean giving up on your dreams or ignoring your responsibilities. It means doing what you can, with love, with clarity, and releasing the rest. It's showing up fully, but without attachment to how things must unfold. It's saying, I will act, but I won't cling. I will care, but I won't control. This is not weakness, it's mastery. When you live this way, you start to notice subtle shifts. The same situations that once triggered you begin to soften. The same people who once disturbed your peace lose their power to do so. You realize you can witness chaos without being pulled into it. You can hold love without fear of loss. You can work toward goals without anxiety about results. This is the freedom of non-attachment, not the absence of emotion, but the presence of wisdom. Ask yourself, what are you holding on to that's weighing you down? Is it a version of your past that no longer exists? A future you're trying to force into being? Or a belief that says you must always be in control to be safe? What if you stopped trying to fix the flow and simply trusted where it's carrying you? Because the truth is, life has always been moving toward your growth, not your destruction. Even the detours, even the delays, even the endings are part of the river's path. You don't need to push the water to make it move. You just need to stop fighting it. Every time you release control, you give life permission to surprise you. Every time you let go, you make space for something new to arrive. Peace, clarity, grace. Letting go isn't about loss. It's about making room. So today, loosen your grip. On outcomes, on perfection, on the idea that you must have everything figured out. Allow life to unfold, imperfect and unpredictable, because when you stop controlling it, life doesn't fall apart, it falls into place. And that's the quiet miracle of this path. The moment you surrender, you don't weaken. You awaken. You realize the river never needed your direction, it only needed your trust. Lesson 5. Respond, don't react. There's a sacred space inside you, small, quiet, and often forgotten. It exists between what happens and how you respond. Most people never see it. They move through life reacting to everything, every word, every insult, every challenge, as if their emotions are pulling the strings. But between every trigger and your reaction, there is a sacred gap. A single breath where wisdom lives. That gap is where your freedom begins. It's where awareness lives before anger takes over, before fear writes the story, before the mind turns emotion into chaos. In that instant, barely a breath, barely a pause, you have a choice. You can react from habit or respond from consciousness. One leads to regret, the other leads to peace. How many times have you spoken words you didn't mean simply because you couldn't pause long enough to see clearly? How many times have you replayed a conversation, wishing you'd stayed calm instead of exploding? This is the suffering of reaction, the moment when we surrender our inner peace to outer noise. In Buddhist philosophy, this space, this pause, is the heart of mindfulness. The Buddha taught that the mind, when untrained, is like a wild flame. It burns without direction, consuming everything in its path. But when you learn to observe that flame without being ruled by it, it becomes light, it becomes clarity. Stillness isn't weakness, it's power under control. To respond instead of react is to master that power. It means you no longer let emotions drive your choices. You let awareness guide them. It means that when anger rises, you don't feed it. You breathe through it. When fear whispers, you don't obey it. You observe it. When the world demands a reaction, you offer silence first. Before you reply in anger, pause. Before you spiral into fear, breathe. Before you let anxiety rush your words, feel your feet on the ground. Feel the air moving in and out of your chest. In that single act of awareness, you step out of the storm and into the sky above it. Let's pause here. Imagine this moment clearly. You're standing in the middle of an argument. The tension rises. Your heart beats faster. The urge to defend yourself burns. You can feel every word forming on your tongue. But then you remember, I have a choice. So you breathe. You allow 1 second of silence. In that breath, something shifts. The situation is still the same, but you are not. You've reclaimed your center. You've become the master of your energy instead of its victim. That single breath is where wisdom lives. It's what turns conflict into understanding, fear into patience, and pain into insight. Buddhist monks often describe it like this. When your mind is still, the mud of emotion settles and the water becomes clear. Think of that when anger clouds your thoughts. Don't stir the water. Let it settle. Don't fight the feeling. Watch it with gentle awareness until it dissolves. This practice isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about transforming it. Reaction is unconscious energy. Response is awakened energy. Reaction says, I must win. Response asks, what truly matters here? Reaction speaks from the ego. Response speaks from wisdom. It takes immense strength to be still when everything inside you wants to shout. But that stillness is not silence. It's intelligence. It's you refusing to hand your peace to every passing trigger. It's you protecting your inner calm as the most sacred temple you have. In our modern world, reaction is everywhere. Social media trains you to respond instantly. Emotions flare at every headline. Everyone is defending something, their beliefs, their pride, their idea of how things should be. But mindfulness teaches a different path. Pause before participation, observe before opinion, and choose peace before noise. Because the louder the world becomes, the more sacred your calm truly is. When you begin living from this awareness, time feels different. Moments stretch, the world slows, and the same situations that once overwhelmed you begin to feel lighter. You start to see how little most things truly require your reaction. Someone's anger no longer pulls you in. A problem no longer decides your mood. You begin to live deliberately, not impulsively. And in that shift, you discover what it really means to be free. The Buddha once said, do not let the actions of others disturb your inner peace. That doesn't mean ignoring the world or staying silent in the face of injustice. It means meeting life's chaos from a place of balance, not reactivity. Being calm enough to choose your words wisely, to act with compassion, and to direct your energy with intention. Ask yourself, how many of your problems truly come from what happens, and how many come from how you react to what happens? If you could master that single moment, that sacred breath between stimulus and response, how different would your days feel? This is where true mental strength is built, not in controlling life, but in mastering the way you meet it. Reacting is simple, but true mastery lies in how you respond. When you react, life takes the driver's seat. When you respond, you remember. You're not the storm, you're the sky that calmly watches it move on. When someone challenges you, pause for a moment. Feel the rush of emotion rise, then let it quiet down. When fear shows up, breathe slowly once and ask, what's real right now? When life feels like it's pushing you, remember, peace never hurries. The more you practice this, the clearer you'll see. The world doesn't need your reaction, it needs your awareness. Your steady presence isn't only peace for yourself, it brings calm to everyone around you. Real strength doesn't shout, it listens and watches. It stays patient until the right time comes. Acting with awareness is the truest form of power. Always remember, there's a small breath between what happens and what you do. In that pause, you can choose calm instead of chaos. Each time you make that choice, you stop just surviving. You start mastering life. To react is instinct. To respond is growth. And in that growth lives a quiet, steady power, a mind that stays still while the world keeps turning. When you stop holding on so tightly, life won't become perfect, but it will finally become peaceful. Peace comes when you stop forcing it. It was never about fixing every flaw or making everything turn out your way. It's about loosening your grip just enough to see that peace was never something to chase. It's always been there, quietly waiting for your permission to arrive. Along this journey, you've learned that control was never true safety. It was tension disguised as order. Real strength doesn't come from holding on tighter, but from learning to let go. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment, not because love or care are wrong, but because clinging turns love into fear and care into exhaustion. When we try to freeze life in place, we miss its beauty as it flows. Think about how many moments have slipped away while you were busy holding on to something already meant to move. How many mornings faded while your mind replayed yesterday? How many nights were lost worrying about tomorrow? Control may feel powerful, but it steals the present, the only place life truly exists. True inner strength isn't about stopping the storm. It's about being still enough to watch it pass. Picture yourself as the mountain beneath the sky, steady, grounded, and unshaken, watching light and shadow, sun and rain come and go. The storm arrives and fades, the clouds gather and clear, yet the mountain remains, calm and strong. That's the kind of strength real peace gives, not the strength to fight against life, but the strength to trust it. A quiet wisdom begins to grow when you stop resisting what already is. You start to see that peace doesn't come from having control or certainty. It comes from surrender. Life isn't meant to be managed. It's meant to be lived. You don't need every answer. You just need to be present for the question. When you let go of the need to know, to push, or to fix everything, you open space for something deeper than control: clarity. So ask yourself softly, what can I release today, not to lose it, but to free myself? What weight can I set down, even for a little while, so my hands are open again? Maybe it's the need to be understood. Maybe it's the pressure of expectations. Maybe it's the belief that you always have to be strong. Whatever it is, let it breathe. Let it drift away like a leaf floating on the wind, not out of defeat, but out of trust. Trust the timing. Trust the unfolding. Trust that even in uncertainty, life is still guiding you exactly where you're meant to be. The river doesn't question its turns. It simply keeps flowing, knowing every bend is part of the journey. And neither should you. Peace begins the moment you stop trying to control the flow and start allowing yourself to move with it. So, as you step away from this reflection, hold this truth close. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are simply being guided in ways your mind has yet to see. Control was never your purpose. Awareness is. Let life unfold. Let peace rise within you. And as you take one final gentle breath, let these words rest softly in your heart. May you find peace not through control, but through trust. May you discover strength not in pushing harder, but in surrendering deeper. And may you always remember, the calm you've been seeking has lived within you all along, waiting to be found in the art of letting go.